The evening air down by the Riverwalk was always clean and sharp, like it had been bought fresh and put there just for the people who worked in the glass towers. It was the kind of place where everything was in its place. The benches, the fancy lampposts, the little trees in big concrete pots. For the man who sat on the same bench every evening, it was a 5-minute slice of quiet. He was a man who moved billions of dollars with a phone call, whose name was in bold print in business papers. Here, for 5 minutes, he was just a man watching the water turn dark as the city lights came on. His routine was as precise as his deals. Leave the office, walk the polished stone path, sit, breathe, leave. His driver would be waiting, engine purring, just out of sight. Those 5 minutes were the only part of his day that didn't have a price tag. Tonight, something was different. Not a big difference, but enough to catch his eye. Over by one of the big concrete planters, where flowering bushes were supposed to make everything nice, there was a person. A young woman. She was wearing an old green jacket that swallowed her whole, and she was carefully laying out a piece of folded cardboard on the ground. She moved slowly, like every motion cost her energy that he felt a small pinch of annoyance. This was his bench, his quiet time. He didn't come here to be reminded of the city's messy problems. He looked away, focusing hard on a boat going down the river, pretending she wasn't there. But you can't just unsee someone. From the corner of his eye, he watched her. She wasn't asking anyone for anything. She just sat on her cardboard, pulled her knees up to her chest, and became very still, staring at nothing. She looked young, too young to be so still and so alone on the cold ground. The next evening, she was there again. Same spot, same jacket. He sat on his bench, and he could feel her presence like a soft noise you can't ignore. He tried to read a news alert on his phone, but the words didn't stick. He found himself wondering where she came from during the day. Where did she go to wash up? Did she have anyone? He shook the thoughts away. Sentimentality was a luxury, and his world was built on hard numbers. On the third evening, it was drizzling. A fine, cold mist hung in the air. He almost didn't walk to the bench, but his habit was strong. She was there, huddled under the slight overhang of the planter, the hood of her jacket pulled up. Her shoulders were hunched against the damp. He sat down, the wet bench soaking cold into his expensive wool coat. It was stupid. He should just leave. He didn't. He sat for his full 5 minutes, the silence between them thicker than the fog on the water. When he stood to go, he glanced at her. A strand of her hair had escaped her hood, and the mist had caught in it, making it sparkle for a second under the lamplight. For a ridiculous moment, he thought about offering her the umbrella his driver kept in the car. He didn't. He walked away, the feeling in his gut not guilt, but something else, a curiosity that felt dangerously close to care. The fourth evening was clear and cold. His routine felt hollow now, like he was just acting out the steps. He sat. She was in her spot, this time eating a small apple with slow, deliberate bites. When he got up to leave, his path took him a little closer to her than usual. That's when he heard it. A voice, so quiet it was almost part of the river's own whisper. "Sir." He stopped. He wasn't even sure she was talking to him. He turned his head slightly. She wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the far side of the river, where the nice walkways ended and the city turned into a tangle of old warehouses and wild trees. Her voice, when it came again, was low and flat. "They live by the river near me." She swallowed. "Under the old train bridge. A little boy and his mom. He's got a cough." It sounds bad in the dark. It echoes. Then she went silent, as if she had used up all her words. She just curled in on herself a little more. The man stood there, frozen. His mind, so quick with figures and strategies, stumbled. Was this a request? A story? Why was she telling him? He felt put on the spot, and it made his reply come out colder than he meant. "You should contact the social services. They have people for this." It was the logical answer, the correct answer. Finally, she looked at him, and in her eyes, there was no anger, no pleading. There was just a deep, tired knowing. It was the look of someone who had already tried all the logical answers and found them to be dead ends. She didn't argue. She just gave the tiniest shake of her head and looked back at the river, dismissing him that he walked to his car, his polished shoes clicking on the stone. But her words walked with him. Cough that sounds bad in the dark. It painted a picture in his mind, a small, sharp picture that didn't fit anywhere in his world of spreadsheets and boardrooms. He saw a dark space under a bridge, the glow of a single candle maybe, and the sound of a sick child coughing while a mother tried to hush him. It was a specific human detail that refused to fade that he got into the warm, silent car. "Home, sir?" his driver asked. "Yes," the man said. But as the city lights slid past the window, he wasn't seeing them. He was seeing the opposite bank of the river, a place he had never once thought about, where the light didn't reach. The girl's whisper had been a tiny crack in the bubble of his life, and a cold draft of the real world was now seeping in. He didn't know what to do about it. He just knew, uncomfortably, that he could no longer pretend he hadn't heard it. For 2 whole days, the man was swept away by his own world. A business trip to another city, meetings in rooms with views even higher than his own, fancy dinners where the problems discussed were abstract and cost millions to solve. In that world, the river walk, the girl, and her whisper about a cough in the dark felt like a strange dream, something that couldn't possibly have happened to him. He was a man who dealt in realities, and that felt unreal. But on the flight back, something shifted. The plane cut through a blanket of clouds, and below, the world was a patchwork of tiny lights and vast darkness. He sipped his water and stared out the window. His mind, finally quiet from the chatter of deals, drifted back. Not to her asking for money, which he was used to and knew how to handle. It drifted back to the fact that she hadn't. She hadn't asked for a thing for herself. She had simply told him a piece of the truth she carried. "They live by the river near me." It was a statement, a burden shared. He realized, with a jolt that made him set his glass down too hard, that she had chosen him as a witness. A tired, homeless girl had seen a billionaire on a bench and decided he needed to know something. The arrogance of it, and the strange, painful honor of it, hit him at once. The next evening, he didn't go to his bench. Instead, he told his driver to take him across the river. "The old industrial side, near the disused railway bridge," he said, his voice sounding odd to his own ears. The driver, a man who had learned not to show surprise, simply nodded. "Very good, sir." The car left the smooth, clean streets and entered a different city. The pavement grew cracked. Buildings were warehouses with broken windows. Their signs faded to ghosts. The streetlights were fewer, and some were dark. He felt a prickling on his skin that wasn't from the cold. This was a place his life was designed to avoid. "Here is fine," he said when he saw the dark, hulking shape of the train bridge ahead, cutting across the night sky. "Wait here. I won't be long." He stepped out of the car. The air here didn't smell clean and manufactured. It smelled of wet earth, old oil, and something sour. The sound of the city was a distant rumble. Up close, the noises were closer. The skitter of something in the weeds, the drip of water, the wind whistling through the bridge's iron bones. That he picked his way down a sloping, trash-strewn path towards the water. His expensive leather shoes slipped on mud and crushed cans. This was a stupid idea. Dangerous, even. What was he hoping to find? Proof that she was telling the truth? Proof that she was lying? He felt completely out of his element, a visitor from a distant planet. And then he heard it. A cough. Not a polite, clearing of the throat cough. This was a raw, deep, rattling sound. It came from the deep blackness under the center of the bridge. It was followed by a low, shushing voice, a woman's voice, tired and frayed. "I know, baby. I know. Try to sleep." The man stood as still as one of the bridge's pillars. His eyes adjusted to the gloom. He could make out shapes, pile of blankets, the faint, dying glow of what might be a candle or a tiny lantern, the outline of a woman rocking back and forth, a small bundle in her arms. The cough came again, worse this time, tearing through the quiet. It was the sound the girl had described. It did sound bad in the dark. It sounded hopeless. A wave of something hotter than shame, more confusing than pity, washed over him. It was the sheer, undeniable reality of it. This wasn't a statistic in a charity report. This was a child sick, in the cold under a bridge. And a girl who slept on cardboard a mile away was carrying the sound of that cough with her. He didn't move forward. He didn't announce himself. What would he say? "Hello, I'm a billionaire. A girl told me about you?" He was an intruder here. His presence felt like a violation of their fragile space. He slowly, quietly, stepped back up the path, his heart beating hard in his chest. Back in the car, the warmth felt suffocating. "Back to the office," he told the driver. But he didn't go to the office. He went to his empty, quiet apartment atop one of the glass towers. He poured a drink but didn't drink it. He stood at his window, looking down at the river, a silver ribbon cutting through the city's glow. He could trace the path with his eyes. From his bench, across the water, to the shadow where the bridge lay, he had built his life, his fortune, on solving problems. He identified an inefficiency, he allocated resources, he fixed it. This was a problem. A small, acute human problem. He couldn't fix the whole city. He didn't even know if he could fix this. But he knew he couldn't unknow it. He moved to his desk. Not the one in his office with assistants outside, but a small, personal one. He picked up a phone, a private line. He called a woman who handled sensitive things for him. Legal things, personal things. Her voice was calm and professional on the other end. "I need you to arrange something," he said, his voice low. Discreetly. "No connection to me," he explained. "A private medical team, the best, to go to the old railway bridge. A quiet place for a mother and child to stay. Not a shelter. Something anonymous and safe. A social worker paid directly to help them navigate whatever came next. Make it seem like a stroke of luck," he instructed. "A charity outreach they were selected for. No names. Especially not mine." He hung up. The action felt both powerful and utterly inadequate. He had just thrown money at a problem he didn't understand. It was what he knew how to do. But it felt different this time. The money wasn't for a tax break or for reputation. It was to silence a cough in the dark that a girl with tired eyes had entrusted to him. The next evening, he went back to his bench on the riverwalk. The sky was a deep purple. He saw her, Maya, from a distance, arranging her cardboard. His usual 5-minute rule was gone. He sat, and he waited. He watched the river until he heard her settle. Then he did something he never did. He moved. He stood and walked the 20 feet to her planter. He didn't stand over her. He just sat down on the ground near her, not too close, his back against the cold concrete. He looked straight ahead, at the same river she looked at. He spoke softly, to the water. "The people under the bridge," he said. "They're being helped. A doctor saw them yesterday. They have a warm room, for a while at least." There was a long, long silence. He heard a small, sharp breath, like a gasp caught and held. When her voice came, it was thick. "Thank you." 2 words, heavy with a meaning he understood. It wasn't just for the help. It was for listening. It was for going to see. It was for believing her. He nodded, still not looking at her. "What's your name?" he asked. Another pause. "Maya," she said, the word a little stronger. "I'm Elias," he said. It was the first time he'd given just his first name to a stranger in years. He finally glanced at her. "You didn't have to tell me. Why did you tell me?" Maya pulled her jacket tighter. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "I see you every day," she said finally. "You see the water, the buildings. You don't see this." She gestured a little at herself, at the ground. "And they were worse off. That cough. It was in my head all the time. I had to put it somewhere else. I had to give it to someone who could maybe do something." She looked at him, her dark eyes clear in the lamplight. "Sometimes the person who sees needs someone else to see, too. Or it gets too heavy." Elias looked at this young woman, who understood the weight of witness and the strategy of sharing a burden better than any of his corporate advisors. He just nodded. He had no words that were good enough. He got up, his knees protesting. He started to walk towards his waiting car, then stopped. He turned back. "I'll be here tomorrow," he said. It wasn't a question or an invitation. It was just a fact. A faint, almost invisible nod from the shape by the planter. Okay. Her voice floated back. He walked away, the picture in his mind different now. Not just a sick child under a bridge, but a girl on cardboard, carrying the worries of people even worse off than herself. His world of billions felt strangely small. Her world of a single blanket and a shared whisper felt strangely, terribly large. The routine changed. It wasn't just a 5-minute pause anymore. Now, Elias would leave his tower with a paper bag from the deli near his office. 2 sandwiches, 2 coffees. Plain, simple food. He'd walk to the bench, but instead of sitting, he'd walk the last 20 feet to the large concrete planter. Maya would be there, usually already settled on her piece of cardboard. He'd sit on the ground a few feet away, his back against the cold stone, and place the bag between them. For the first few evenings, he'd just say, "Extra one," and nod at the bag. She'd look at it for a long moment, then take a sandwich and a coffee with a quiet, "Thanks." They ate in silence, watching the same river. It was a strange kind of sharing a meal. There was no small talk. The city sounds filled the space. The distant hum of traffic, the occasional laugh from someone walking by on the nicer part of the path, the lap of water against the stone wall. One evening, after about a week of this, she spoke first. She was holding the coffee cup in both hands, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Is the boy okay?" she asked, her voice tentative, like she was afraid of the answer. Elias took a sip of his own coffee. He'd gotten a brief update from the social worker, relayed through his assistant. "The cough was a bad chest infection," he said, keeping his tone flat, factual. "The doctors gave him medicine. He's on the mend. They're in a safe place for a few weeks, while his mother meets with someone to help figure out next steps." He didn't say more. He didn't talk about the hotel bill or the private nurse who checked in or the grocery vouchers. He just gave her the human result. The boy was getting better. Maya let out a long, slow breath. It wasn't quite a sigh. It was more like she was letting go of a weight she'd been holding in her chest. She nodded, just once, and went back to sipping her coffee. But her shoulders, usually tense and hunched, looked just a little bit softer. That small exchange opened a door. Not a wide one, just a crack. The silences that followed weren't empty anymore. They were comfortable. They were 2 people sharing a space. Nothing expected. A few days later, it was raining again. A steady, cold drizzle. Elias arrived, his coat beaded with water. He expected her to be under her usual overhang, but she wasn't. A little jolt of worry shot through him. He stood there, holding the damp paper bag, feeling foolish. Then he saw her, coming from the direction of the public restrooms a block away. Her hair was wet and slicked back, and her face looked freshly washed. She was wearing the same big jacket, but underneath he could see a different, cleaner-looking sweatshirt. She saw him and gave a small, almost shy nod as she settled back into her spot. He sat down, handing her the bag. "Found a better spot to wait out the rain?" he asked, making his voice casual. She shrugged, taking a sandwich. "Library's good. Warm. Quiet. Bathrooms are cleaner. But they kick you out if you look like you're settling in. Gotta keep moving." It was the first real piece of information she'd volunteered about her own life. Elias filed it away. The library. It made sense. He could picture her there, in some corner, maybe reading. The idea of her having to keep moving sat heavily in his gut. "Where do you?" He started, then stopped. He was about to ask, "Where do you sleep?" But it felt like an invasion. He changed it. "Is this your usual spot?" "Here. By the planter. Most nights, when the weather's not too bad," she said, taking a bite. "It's off the main path. The security guys on bikes usually leave me alone if I'm just sitting, not lying down. The bushes block some of the wind." She said it like she was giving a weather report or reviewing a hotel. "The spot under the overpass near 4th is drier, but it's noisier and the guys who hang there can be trouble. The doorway by the old bank is good if it's pouring, but you have to be gone before 5:30 when the bakery opens." Elias listened, his sandwich forgotten. She was giving him a tour of a city he thought he owned. Her city. A map of survival, written in spots of relative safety and pockets of danger. Her knowledge was vast, precise, and heartbreaking. She was an expert in a field no one should have to study. "That's a lot to keep track of," he said, because he couldn't think of anything else to say. Another shrug. "It's just how it is. You learn or you don't last." The rain picked up, tapping a rhythm on the concrete above them. They finished their food in silence. As he got up to leave, his clothes damp and sticking to him, he had a thought. It was risky. It could break this fragile thing between them. He turned to her. "I have a foundation. One of those charity things." He tried to say it lightly, like it was no big deal. "It's supposed to help with city problems. Housing, stuff like that. But the people who run it, they have all the numbers, but they don't really know." He gestured around them. The library schedule. Which overpass is noisy? Where the safe doors are?" Maya was watching him carefully, her eyes wary. "I think it needs an advisor," he continued, looking out at the rain-rippled river so he wouldn't have to see her reaction. "Someone with on-the-ground intelligence. A consultant. They'd pay a fee for a meeting now and then, for advice." He reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out a plain white business card and a small, prepaid flip phone, still in its package. He placed them on the dry patch of concrete next to her. "The number on the back of the card is for a lawyer. A woman. She's fair. She'd set up a proper contract. The phone. It's just a phone. For the job." He didn't wait for an answer. He just gave a short nod and walked away into the rain, his heart beating hard. He'd just offered a multi-billion-dollar foundation a homeless teenager as a consultant. It was insane. It was the most logical thing he'd done in weeks. The next evening was clear and cold. He approached with the usual bag, his stomach tight. Would she be gone? Would the card and phone be left there, a silent rejection? She was there. The card and phone were not on the ground. They were in her hands. She was turning the phone over and over, her brow furrowed. He sat down, placed the bag between them. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, she held up the phone. "A consultant," she said, the words sounding strange in her mouth. "You want to pay me for what I already know. For knowing which shelter serves the best bread. For knowing which street cleaner looks the other way." He met her gaze. "Yes," he said simply. "That's exactly what I want to pay you for. What you know is real. What they know in boardrooms is just theory. It's not worth half as much." She looked down at the phone, her thumb tracing its edge. The wariness in her eyes was mixing with something else. Something fragile and fierce. It was pride. Not the pride of a big achievement, but the pride of someone whose hard-won, painful knowledge was finally being seen as valuable. "I don't know anything about contracts," she said quietly. "The lawyer will explain it. It just means you get paid fairly, on time, no tricks. You have my word." She was silent for another full minute. The river flowed. A boat honked in the distance. Then she gave a single, sharp nod. "Okay," she said. "I'll call the lawyer." Elias felt a release of tension he hadn't even known he was holding. He nodded back. "Good." He took out his sandwich and she took hers. They ate, and this time the silence felt different. It wasn't just comfortable. It was charged with a new understanding. He wasn't just a man on a bench bringing food anymore. She wasn't just a girl on cardboard receiving charity. They had entered into a deal. An unorthodox, impossible deal, but a deal between two people who had, against all odds, found a way to meet in the middle. The river, for that moment, didn't feel the prepaid phone buzzed for the first time 3 days later. Elias was in the middle of a tense meeting about acquisition timelines. The phone was in his pocket, set to vibrate. He never took personal calls in meetings, but this number only one person had. "Excuse me," he said, his voice cutting through a financial projection. "I must take this." He stepped out into the hushed, carpeted hallway, leaving a room full of surprised executives behind. He answered. "Yes." Her voice was quiet, but clear. "It's me. I met with the lawyer." "Okay." He leaned against the cool glass wall, looking down at the miniature city below. "Was it all right?" "Yeah." She was straight, explained everything. The contract is for consulting services on urban livability and resource accessibility. She said the words slowly, like she was tasting them. 6 months. A meeting every 2 weeks. She said the fee is. She named a number. It was a modest sum for his foundation, a life-changing amount for her. Is that right? It's the standard fee, he said, which was true. He hadn't asked for any special rate. Do you agree? A pause. Yeah, I signed it. She gave me a copy in a folder. He could hear the rustle of paper. She now owned a legal document with her name on it. She helped me open something, a bank account, for the payments. Elias closed his eyes for a second. A bank account. It was such a simple, ordinary thing. A gateway to the normal world. Good, he said, his voice softer. That's good. The first meeting, she said, getting down to business. The lawyer said to arrange it with you. Where? He thought quickly. His office was wrong. A fancy restaurant was worse. It had to be neutral, safe for her. The public atrium in the Lumen building. Do you know it? Big glass ceiling, lots of trees inside. There's a coffee shop in the back. We can meet there. He could almost hear her thinking, accessing her internal map of the city. Yeah, I know it. The security there is okay if you look like you have a reason. Tuesday, 10 in the morning. Tuesday at 10 is perfect, he said. I'll see you then. He hung up and stood in the quiet hallway. The feeling was unfamiliar. It was the satisfaction of a deal closing, but warmer. It felt like a start. On Tuesday, he arrived at the atrium early. He chose a small table tucked near a large potted fig tree, somewhat private. He bought 2 coffees and waited. At 2 minutes to 10, he saw her come in through the main entrance. She looked different. Not because of new clothes. She still wore the same army jacket over a clean gray sweatshirt and dark jeans. But she carried herself differently. Her head was up, her eyes scanning the space not with fear, but with assessment. She had a purpose. She was here for a meeting. She saw him and walked over, not too fast, not too slow. She sat down across from him and gave a small, professional nod. Hello. Hello, he replied, sliding one of the coffees towards her. Thanks for coming. They sipped their coffee. The awkwardness was there, but it was a new kind, the kind at the start of any business relationship. So, he began. The foundation is looking at a new initiative. Low-barrier youth support. They want to create easier ways for people your age to get help without a lot of paperwork or questions. Maya listened, her hands wrapped around the warm cup. Low barrier, she repeated. That means you don't need an ID, or a fixed address, or to be sober for 30 days first. Exactly, he said, impressed. The proposal is to set up a few pilot locations. The board is arguing about where. Some say near the community colleges. Some say near the downtown core. A faint, almost smile touched her lips. It was the first he'd ever seen. Both are wrong, she said, her voice gaining strength. Near colleges, you get kids who maybe crashed on a friend's couch for a week. It's temporary. Downtown core, the security won't let anyone who looks like me hang around. You want the edges, where the late-night buses end their routes. By the 24-hour laundromats on the south side. Near the hospital waiting rooms. That's where people are when they have nowhere else to go. And it's 3 in the morning. Elias pulled out a small notebook, real paper, not his phone. He started writing. Asterisk bus terminals. 24-hour laundromats. Hospital vicinities. Asterisk her advice wasn't from a survey. It was from life. What would make you walk in? He asked. Looking up, she thought for a full minute. First, a sign that doesn't say Hope Center or New Path. Something plain. Just help here. Second, no one behind a glass wall. Just a person at a table. And something to do with your hands right away. Not just forms. Cup of tea. A charger for your phone. Something that lets you sit for a minute and breathe before you have to talk. He wrote furiously. Plain signage. No various. Immediate, no-ask practical aid. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. She spoke about the distrust of big organizations, the importance of peer workers, people who had been through it themselves, the kind of food that was actually useful, granola bars with protein, fruit cups with pull tabs, not sandwiches that got soggy. He mostly listened and wrote. When they were done, he felt he had learned more about the reality of urban poverty than from a decade of glossy foundation reports. This is incredibly helpful, he said, meaning it. Exactly what we need. She finished her coffee. Is that what you needed for the report? It's what I needed to understand, he corrected gently. He took an envelope from his jacket. It was not thick. The first fee, as per the contract. The lawyer said it's better if I give you the first one in cash, until the bank transfers are fully set up. She took the envelope. She didn't open it. She just put it in the inside pocket of her jacket, the one with the zipper. Thank you. Same time in 2 weeks? He asked. She nodded. I'll have some thoughts on the safe haven model they mentioned in the paper the lawyer showed me. Good. She stood up, zipped her jacket over the envelope, and turned to go. Then she stopped and looked back at him. The boy, she said. His mom got a job, part-time, at a cleaning service. The social worker person is helping her look at a training program for office work. Elias felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee. He hadn't asked for an update. She had just given him one. It was her way of closing the loop on the thing that had started it all. I'm glad to hear that, he said. She gave that small nod again and walked away, blending into the lunchtime crowd in the atrium. The bi-weekly meetings became the anchor of his schedule. Sometimes they met in the atrium. Sometimes, when the weather was decent, they went back to the Riverwalk bench, though now they sat side by side on the bench itself, not on the ground. The paper bag of sandwiches was still there, but it felt different now. It was just two colleagues having a working lunch. She was a sharp, natural consultant. She asked to see the data the foundation collected and pointed out where their assumptions were wrong. You say youth, but your survey only reached people at shelters. The ones who don't use shelters, the ones who are smarter or more scared, they're not in your numbers. He brought her insights to the foundation board. He presented them as field research from an anonymous urban consultant. The board, a group of wealthy, well-meaning people, were fascinated. The ideas were fresh, practical, and rang true. One evening by the river, the air turning warm with spring, she was telling him about the problem of stolen belongings in temporary shelters. You need a place to lock your stuff or you won't go in. It's that simple. He was nodding, taking notes. Then he asked a question that had been on his mind. With the consultant fees, you could get a room now. A small one. Why stay out here? She looked out at the water, her face calm. I am getting a room, she said. Next week. A shared house with 2 other girls. It's not fancy, but it has a lock. And a shower you can use anytime. He felt a surge of relief so strong it surprised him. That's wonderful. But I'm not going to stop knowing, she said, her eyes meeting his. The room doesn't erase the map in my head. It just means I have a place to come back to when I'm done looking at yours. He understood. She wasn't moving from her world into his. She was building a bridge between them. She was keeping her expertise, her hard-won knowledge, because now, for the first time, it had value. It had power to change things. He put his notebook away. The official meeting was over. For a few minutes, they just sat in the softening light, the billionaire and the former homeless girl, now his consultant. The water flowed past, the same as always, but nothing else was. Summer arrived, turning the city air thick and warm. The Riverwalk, once a place of cold, sharp silence between them, was now lively with people enjoying the evening. Elias and Maya still met there sometimes, though the dynamic had shifted. The meetings were less frequent now, as the Foundation's new street-level advisory panel, her official, anonymous title, was running smoothly. But the bench by the planter had become a habit for both of them, a place to talk about things that weren't in any report. She had moved into the shared house. She mentioned a roommate who worked at a bakery and brought home day-old pastries. She talked about the strange luxury of a refrigerator of keeping milk cold. She still wore the army jacket, but it was cleaner, and underneath were new, simple clothes bought with her own money. The most significant change was in her eyes. The deep, Exhausted fog had lifted, replaced by a watchful, focused clarity. She was still quiet, but the quiet was no longer a wall. It was a choice point. One evening, Elias arrived to find her already on the bench, looking not at the river, but at a small, sleek laptop. It was one the Foundation had issued her for her work. Her brow was furrowed in concentration. "Trouble with the spreadsheet?" he asked, sitting down beside her. She shook her head without looking up. "No. It's not work." She finally glanced at him. "I'm looking at courses. The community college has one. Social services and community outreach." She said the words carefully, testing them out. A genuine smile spread across Elias's face. It was a rare sight. "That's fantastic," he said, and he meant it. "It's just an idea," she said quickly, closing the laptop. "It's expensive, and I'd have to work less for the Foundation." The Foundation would offer a scholarship for a valued consultant continuing their education, he said, the words coming out in the smooth, decisive tone he used to approve funding. "It's an investment. We'd want you to learn the system from the inside, to make our work better." She studied his face, looking for pity or charity. She found none, only cool, logical support. She nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." They sat for a while, watching the sunset paint the glass towers orange. The silence was the easy kind. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly. Her voice soft. He turned to her, puzzled. "Miss what?" "This," she said, gesturing to the bench, the river, the space between them. "Before, when it was just you and the water, and I was just a problem over by the bushes." He was quiet for a long time. He thought about the sterile peace of those 5 minutes, the way he could shut the whole world out. Then he thought about the heavy whisper that had shattered it. "Sir, they live by the river near me." "No," he said finally, and it was the truth. "I don't miss it at all. That wasn't peace. It was just quiet. There's a difference." She seemed to understand. She looked back at the water. "I don't miss the cardboard," she said, "but sometimes I worry. In the house with a door that locks, that I might forget, that I'll start seeing the river and the buildings, and stop seeing the people under the bridges." "You won't," he said with a certainty that surprised him. "Because you're not like the people in my boardroom. You don't just see problems to be solved. You see people. You always will." It was the greatest compliment he could have given her, and she knew it. She accepted it with a small, silent nod. A few weeks later, the Foundation held a small, private event to mark the launch of the first 2 Help Here locations, based directly on her recommendations. Elias was expected to give brief remarks. He stood at the podium in a room full of donors and partners, his eyes scanning the crowd. He saw her, standing near the back, close to the door. She was wearing a simple dark dress, her hair pulled back. She looked like any other young professional in the room, maybe a junior staffer. But her posture was different. Ready to leave, observant, not quite belonging. He began his speech, thanking the usual people. Then he paused. He looked away from his notes, directly towards the back of the room. "The most valuable insight for this initiative," he said, his voice clear in the quiet room, "did not come from a demographic study or a focus group. It came from a simple human truth, that the first thing someone needs when they are out of options is not a form to fill out, but a moment of dignity. A cup of tea, a place to charge a phone, a person to look them in the eye, not through a glass window." We learned that from someone who understands the city in a way no data can ever capture. Our anonymous consultant reminds us that real help meets people where they are, not where we wish them to be. He didn't look at her for long. He couldn't. But he saw, from the corner of his eye, her straighten her shoulders just a little. No one in the room knew who he was talking about. But she knew. After the speeches, as people mingled with glasses of sparkling water, she slipped out. He found her 10 minutes later, waiting by his town car, which was parked a discreet distance away. "You did well," she said. "The Help Here signs look good. Plain. Like you said." "They were your idea," he replied. He hesitated. "You could have stayed. You're part of this." "I'm more useful out here," she said, gesturing to the street. And you know it. He did know it. She was his bridge to a world he could never truly access, and she had to keep one foot firmly on that other shore for the bridge to stand. The college course, he said. Have you decided? I start next month, she said. And this time she did smile, a real one, brief but bright. The foundation scholarship came through. Of course it did, he said, smiling back. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a paper bag. Here, from the deli. For old time's sake. She took it. Inside was a single sandwich and a coffee. Not two, just one. She understood. The shared meals on the ground were over. This was a token, a goodbye to that part of their story. Thank you, she said. My driver can give you a lift, he offered. She shook her head, holding the bag in her laptop case. I'll take the bus. I have some thinking to do. He didn't argue. He got into the car. As it pulled away, he looked out the window. She was still standing there, a young woman with a laptop and a paper bag, looking not at the departing car, but at the city around her, her city, with all its visible and invisible worlds. Then she turned and walked, not towards the bus stop, but down a side street, disappearing into the tapestry of the night. Elias leaned back in his seat. He didn't feel like a man who had just come from a successful charity launch. He felt like a man who had just paid off a debt he didn't know he owed. The whisper that had once been a burden was now a quiet voice on a foundation panel. A student enrolled in college, a person with a door that locked that he didn't go to the Riverwalk bench the next evening, or the one after that. His old ritual was gone, and he didn't need it back. Sometimes, peace wasn't about quiet. It was about knowing that a cough in the dark had been silenced, and that the person who had heard it first was now safe, armed with her own hard-won knowledge, and already turning to help silence the next one. The story that began with a murmur on a cold bench hadn't ended with a rescue. It had ended with a partnership, with a scholarship, with a young woman walking confidently into the dark, not because she had to, but because she chose to, carrying a light she had managed to keep burning against all the odds. And for the man in the quiet car, that was a better ending than any he could have bought.